Yeah, as it struck 9, actually. Good morning. Would Commissioner, staff, and guests please rise for our pledge of allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please be seated. First on our agenda is public comment. At this time, any member of the public wishing to address the board may do so for up to 3 minutes.
Is this on? Yep. Good morning to everyone. I am Scott Savage from Hastings Charter Township. I think it's important for a person to admit their mistakes and own up to them. So I am here today to publicly apologize to the Board of Commissioners and everyone here for my bad behavior at last Tuesday's meeting. I allowed my distress and emotions concerning continued gun violence, concerning the violence in our country, to influence my behavior. I showed disrespect to a citizen voicing her opinion, and I violated the accepted rules of decorum at a gathering such as this. I even violated my own ethics. For this, I am truly sorry. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there further public comment?
Rick Moore, Berry County Parks and Rec Commission. This is my usual speech. I wish to remind members and guests to speak into the microphone or use your outdoor voice. We're all appreciative of your inspirational ideas. I'm used to working alone all my life and being my own little dictator, but it's very nice to be around a bunch of intelligent people with interesting ideas, and I like working together with you all. So remember, speak into the microphone or use your outdoor voice. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rick, for that public service announcement. Is there additional public comment?
Hi, Cindy Twitchell from Prairieville Township, and I call it my mama voice that I use. And I'm sorry the gentleman left. I want to tell him how much I appreciate. I haven't been able to be here to see the meetings or be part of them, but I have watched them, and I do appreciate his apology. It takes someone very filled with ethics to be able to stand up and admit when you're wrong, so I appreciate that. That is not a segue into what I have to say, just so you know. A couple of weeks ago, actually it was on the March 21st meeting when I was watching it, Chairman Jackson made a comment regarding gravel pits. I empathize with gravel pits. There has been legislation at the state for several years where the lobbyists for the gravel pits want to take it out of all local control and make it an equal proposition versus having any local control. I support that as well. And I guess I'm looking for clarification. Sometime we can talk maybe. If you're in support of the gravel pits and them taking the local or the control away from the local counties, or if you're in favor of controlling the gravel pits and keeping the control within the local rather than make it a statewide. It just wasn't quite clear to me because I'm all about keeping it local. State controls way too much. People need to control what's happening in their own backyards. A couple of weeks or so ago, when the discussion came up about the health department, a comment was made when discussing the health department with the state. It was noted that the state would like a state-ran health department to make things easier. Of course they would. The further you can remove the people from making decisions for themselves, the people are easier to control. It is imperative that the people remain in control of their local concerns. Eaton County and Berry County are different. By having two counties joined into one health department, the people in both counties do not have control over their individual counties. They are unable to streamline the benefits that better benefit the people of their county. We, the people, need to be able to maintain the control of our local counties. Now, in regard to 3 applicants that applied for the Zoning Board of Appeals, there were 3 positions to fill and 3 applicants applied. All 3, many of you stated, were well qualified for those positions. But the only concern that was brought up was that Philip Joseph and Dan Willett happened to be in-laws. The board made an assumption that there may be problems. I think it quite curious that the board is concerned about 2 applicants being related serving on the same board, but don't seem to be as concerned when there is 1 commissioner on the board who happens to be on several boards, private and public, that commingle their decisions.
Could you summarize your comments, Cindy?
I myself am more concerned about personal advancement and benefits received by 1 person than I'm about 2 men who are related and have different brains and think for themselves. I, for one, believe that an injustice was done to Dan Willett, and the board should rectify this injustice by taking a vote to accept Dan Willett's application to be on the Zoning Board of Appeals and appoint Dan Willett to the board. And also, I still did not see
Thank you.
anything about the private or the part-time individuals that requested a raise quite a while ago. I know it said it was going to be brought up. I have not seen it discussed. I really do think that needs to be brought up and discussed as soon as possible and retro from when it was asked for.
Thank you. Is there additional public comment? Hearing none, we'll move ahead with our agenda. Interviews for the Community Mental Health Authority Board. We have 3, potentially 4 positions available. First on our list of interviewees, Mark Bonsignor. Come on down. Good morning, Mark. If you would, tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and why you see yourself being a good fit for community mental health.
I've lived in Berry County for a little over 51 years now. I originally moved here with my ex-wife to be co-directors of Circle Pine Center, a children and family camp. Since the 3 years I spent there, I've been a carpenter as far as my career is concerned. Among other things, I spent 10 years working at the Kalamazoo Valley Museum building exhibits. And let's see what else. My wife and I live on Fair Lake, which is the southernmost nesting ground of the loon in the world. Mm-hmm. And we're very fortunate to have that wonderful place to live. It's a house that I designed and built myself. Relevant to this interview, I did mention in my application that way back, I did spend a wonderful summer working in a mental health hospital in Illinois, which at the time had the most progressive mental health laws in the nation. And it was a wonderful experience. I had actually intended to pursue that as a career in some fashion, but things didn't work out that way. So I ended up here in Berry County. And but I do have an interest in that, and I think I could make a contribution in that regard. So,
thank you. Commissioner Doster, we're going to let you start with the interview questions this morning.
I have nothing.
No questions?
Nope.
Okay, awesome. Commissioner Carlton.
I have no questions.
Commissioner Getty.
Moving my microphone closer, Rick. I appreciated the thoroughness in which you filled out your applications and relating your personal experience with mental health, both in the way past, but it sounds like in the more recent past. just helping friends and neighbors get access to it or avail themselves of services. It helps remove the, sometimes a stigma associated with asking for help. And so I appreciate that and your willingness to serve.
Commissioner Smelker.
When I was on the mental health board, I know you attended meetings. Since I've been off, have you still attended the meetings, Mark?
I've attended one more, I believe, since you were on there. I missed the last one due to CRS. But
Right? Thank you. That's all I got.
Commissioner Tunison.
Morning, Mark.
Morning.
I've seen you at the mental health board meeting. I know you're very interested in it, and I think you'd be a great fit on that board. So just want to let you know that.
Commissioner Campbell.
Morning, Mark.
Morning, Bruce.
I too have known Mark a long time. I guess the thing that's impressive about Mark is I'm not sure his attendance at these meetings aren't better than mine at times. So dedication is one of Mark's strong pursuits, and I know we've discussed a few times of occasions that have come up where mental health has been involved in your life personally, and also your time spent at Illinois there. So I think you'd be a good fit, Mark. Glad you're here.
Thanks, Bruce.
Commissioner Hatfield.
Morning, Mark. Thank you for your interest in this. What do you see a couple of the key issues confronting the board at this point? Mental health board.
Well, I'm not sure I can speak very authoritatively as far as the board is concerned, but I would say in terms of what I see as a major issue in a general sense is gun violence, and in particular, how it affects our young people today. I remember when I was in grade school, we used to have air raid drills, and we were supposed to duck and cover, get under our desks as if that would protect us from a nuclear weapon and that sort of thing. But I think today, that was kind of an abstract sort of threat. But now today, kids with active shooter drills, they see this on television every night practically. And there have been over 30 on-campus shootings this year already, not the 3 that was mentioned last week, but over 30, with 18 people killed. And I can't imagine being a young person today faced with that. Seems to me that'd be a big issue to face every day going to school, not just for parents, but for the kids themselves. I think we need to do something, somehow do something about that.
Thank you. No other questions?
Thank you. Mark, you've attended some community mental health meetings. If you're selected as a board member, is there anything you'd like to see them address or anything that you think that they should work on or do better?
Well, as I say, it's an enormously complex organization, and I've just started to learn about it. So I wouldn't feel comfortable going beyond what I just said about, as far as a major issue is concerned. So.
Okay. All right. I have no further questions. We certainly thank you for your application and your willingness to serve your community.
Can I say one other thing?
Sure.
Yeah. When I mentioned to a friend of mine that I was planning to apply for this job, he said, "That's wonderful. My daughter was helped so much by Berry County Mental Health, in contrast to what happened to her when she lived in Kent County." She said, in Kent County, she was just a number, but here in Berry County, she was a person, and she had personalized, humanized care that did her a lot of good. So I'd like to be a part of that.
Awesome. Thank you, Mark.
Thanks.
Next on our interview list is Lorraine Lindsay.
Good morning.
Good morning, Lorraine. How are you?
Good.
Same thing. If you would tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and why you see yourself being a good fit for community mental health.
I've been getting more involved in things in Berry County since I returned to this area. I was born and raised in Berry County, graduated from Delton Kellogg High School, went to KCC for 2 years, went to Western for a semester, and then got married. My husband was from Branch County, so we moved down there. I finished my bachelor's degree at Spring Arbor University in 2003 at the age of 51. And I did that partly because I had been appointed a postmaster in Tekonsha, Michigan, and I wanted to be able to do more in my job than just be a postmaster. So I was a trainer, did a lot of technology stuff and everything for the post office. So since I've been retired, I was pretty much a caregiver for my husband who had Lewy body dementia. And he passed November 30th of 2020, but we had moved back here to be next to my daughter and to have her help. And I was so glad that they had found that Berry County was a good place to live because I was very glad to come back. And currently, I'm in the Lions Club. I help with food distribution. I do senior home bingo in Tekonsha. I'm on the annual scholarship review. And I'm a Moose member in Delton. So I'm just happy to be here, and I'm concerned enough about mental health issues, having dealt with family members and so on, that I would really like to be a part of this.
Awesome, thank you. Commissioner Doster?
I have nothing further.
Commissioner Colton?
No questions.
Commissioner Getty?
Thank you for applying.
Commissioner Smelker?
No question. Thank you for applying. Very impressive.
Commissioner Tunison?
Obviously, when you have to deal with dementia, you understand what families go through and everything else, and it's a terrible disease, so that's a lot of dedication to do that. So I can see where you do have dedication, so you make a great applicant. Thank you.
Commissioner Campbell?
Good morning, Lorraine.
Good morning. I think I know you.
I think you do, probably.
It's been a long time.
Yes, I see you're a Delton Panther.
Yes.
And unlike me, you were one of the smart kids. So, glad you're here. Looks like you have a lot of stuff preceding you that's going to be beneficial to you, and I think you'll be a good fit for the board.
Thank you.
Commissioner Hatfield?
No questions. Thank you for applying.
Yeah, Lorraine, what is your, I guess, association, or have you done anything, any work? Have you been, attended any meetings with community mental health here locally?
I have not, because until I saw this posting, I didn't really realize what was available in Berry County. At the time that I responded to the posting, I was on hiatus down south. I have a son in the Navy in Georgia, so I was down there visiting. So I didn't get a chance to attend any meetings or anything, but I'm a fast learner. I like to do research. I like to think outside the box. I like to work with other people. I consider myself not the top leader, but the helper to whoever's getting things done, and I will work hard to help anybody be successful.
What was your, I see past employment with Delano Mental Health Clinic.
Yes.
What did you do with them?
I was an intake secretary. I had to go through some empathy training. So I was the first person that talked to somebody who came into the clinic for mental health services. And the clinic employed psychiatrists, psychologists, and social workers. So I worked with all of those people.
Interesting. Well, we certainly appreciate your application. It sounds like you've got some good experience with this, so thank you very much. We'll make a decision at the end of the meeting, and we will let you know.
Thank you.
And you can stay for the entire meeting. You're free to leave, though, if you want to, so thank you. Next on the list, William Mattson. Good morning, William. If you would please tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and I know you're a current member of the Community Mental Health Board as well, so.
That's correct. I've worked in a behavioral health or mental health field or social service field for the past 38 years. Started up in the Midland, Michigan area and have worked all over the state of Michigan and even up in the state of Alaska. Currently, I sit on the CMH board, and I had been on the Animal Shelter Advisory Board here in the county until that was disbanded. I have always looked at my career in being involved in the community, whether that's the Cable Commission in Lake Orion or the Community Mental Health Board in Monroe County. I have always pitched in. I moved here to Berry County as the governor shut down the state for COVID in March of 2020. And almost immediately, I started to look at how I could be involved, and that's what I did is apply for a couple boards or commissions here and was appointed to two. My history with working with people with disabilities and mental health problems stretches across the state, as I said. I currently sit on the Contract and Financial Issues Committee of the Board Association at the state level and bring information back to Berry CMH. So in a nutshell, Chair Jackson, that's me.
Awesome, thank you. Commissioner Doster?
No questions.
Commissioner Colton?
Oh, it sounds like you've a real asset to the board and you deserve reappointment. Thank you for
Thank
serving
you.
on it.
Commissioner Getty?
Thanks for being willing to continue to serve. I was on the board with you for a short
Right.
time, and he's a very competent member.
Thank you.
Commissioner Smelter?
I want to thank you for reapplying. Bill is extremely active on the board, and I believe he makes a very good member of that board.
Thank you.
Commissioner Tunison?
I too want to thank you for reapplying. You'd be a great asset there.
Commissioner Campbell?
I guess I'll copycat everybody, Bill. You seem to have many qualifications, and you've been there, done that, so hope you're back again. Appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
Commissioner Hatfield?
Thank you for reapplying. I know you're, highly regarded by your fellow board members, and we appreciate your service.
Thank you.
I also appreciate your reapplication and your service to the board. As this is the end of your first term?
Correct.
Community mental health. Anything that you've seen that we need to keep our eye on the ball with? Anything that, when you look at it from the state level as well as the local level, are the things that we can do better locally at community mental health?
I think just being involved, and part of that involvement that I pushed being on the board is to be more involved with the Board Association in Lansing, the State Association for CMH Boards. And that really keeps us in the loop. So to have somebody attend the contract and financial issues and bring information back, I think that's important. I think we're doing a great job at CMH. I wouldn't say there's necessarily anything there to correct. One concern I have is sitting with 3 or 4 board openings at a time. And we need to make sure the right people are selected and appointed, and the turnover in board members is a little concerning.
Okay, thank you. I have no further questions. We'll make our decision at the end of the meeting, and we'll let you know. You're
Thank
free to
you.
stay for the entire meeting, or you can leave as needed, so. Thank you, Bill. Next on our list, Robert Miller. Hello, good morning, Robert.
I go by Scott.
Scott,
My middle
okay.
name, right?
Scott, if you would, tell us a little bit about yourself and your background and why you see yourself being a good fit for community mental health.
So I've lived in Hastings. We moved here in 2013 in Allegan County. We moved there in 2008. And so I've been living in rural areas, including during seminary in that state down south for quite some time. Being raised in the city of Flint and then Detroit in the inner city, part of my own mental health experience comes from substance abuse addiction in Detroit to crack cocaine in the 80s and alcohol, plus a serious relapse on alcohol and between 1996 and 2000. So I had this inner city experience and mental health issues of a diagnosis of schizoaffective and diagnosis of substance abuse disorder. I got clean, took my last drink in 2000 and have been clean since. I graduated with a bachelor's degree in social work in 2005, went on to seminary for 2 years and engaged in dairy farm, or being a farmhand, milking, calving. And so I've got both the experience of inner city and 2 tracks. And working as a substance abuse clinician, I'm a licensed master social worker. I know that the problems to each group are unique, and that in Berry County, those issues sometimes are significantly different than the inner city, but the feelings, the behaviors, and self-understandings are often very similar. Some of the obstacles are often very similar. So I bring that understanding. I bring more than 20 years of practice, didactic speaking and public speaking about mental health and substance abuse disorders. Right now I operate a farm. That's part of learning to trust oneself, is learning to trust oneself to make mistakes and know it's not the end of the world, and farming certainly is an introduction to that. So though I've only lived in rural areas, for a part of my life, I've become familiar with some of the obstacles that are included, and I think that the board is a good way to bring my experience to a community that, to this point, I've only met through professional relationships. Right now, I'm currently working up in Augusta. I'm looking to work to dedicate more time to the farm, and so time opens up for me to contribute in other ways to the mental health community and substance abuse community, and I felt that the board was a good way to initiate that here in Berry County.
Awesome, thank you. Commissioner Doster?
No questions.
Commissioner Colton?
I worked intake in Chicago in substance abuse detox for drug and alcohol. And so I was looking, you have a lot of experience in that area. So having worked through alcohol addiction yourself, because I always felt like I didn't really share something with these people because I never had this problem. But since you've had this problem, how does that give you better communication? How do you feel that impacts your work with these people?
I don't know as if I communicate better. I think sometimes there is more, it's a misguided or mistaken trust in someone that's been there because we share a common language, or they believe we share a common experience, and that may help them perceive the empathy that I have as being more consistent with their experience. But I hesitate to say that I relate more because there are professionals who are able to empathize every bit as much as me, even never having experienced addiction themselves. That being said, the ability to speak the language and practice disclosure of my own experience in an appropriate way allows me to say, listen, I know you don't want to be here, you're afraid of losing everything, you've done this twice before and it hasn't worked. And start from there, because a lot of people avoid getting treatment simply because they believe everyone in their life is going to leave when they get the chance. And in fact, that may be true. So how does one work through that? I know you don't want to be here, and the fact is, you might lose everything tomorrow. This is where tomorrow begins.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Getty?
As somebody who has gone through recovery and is also working with folks going through recovery, what do you see as an opportunity that we have in Berry County that we don't have now?
We have resources here that are used in other places that I think can benefit our local community and allow people with mental health issues and potentially substance abuse issues to re-establish themselves in the community. There are a lot of agricultural programs that serve as IOP, intensive outpatient. And that, again, there's nothing that builds confidence like learning to make mistakes. So there's land here, there's opportunity to work with animals, gardens, and that transfers not only into competency, but also sort of a value added to treatment. Oh, now I know how to raise flowers or vegetables or eggs for some income. especially when people are on disability because of mental health, the ability for them to create additional income and be competent, I think is important to stabilizing and getting them to trust treatment providers because they have some independence. And they do begin to say, I'm competent to understand what people are telling me. And that competence is often more important than a diagnosis.
Thank you.
Commissioner Smelker.
Thank you very much for applying, and you don't see any difficulties with farm and attending the meetings early in the morning?
Oh, no.
Very good, thank you.
I'm my favorite kind of farmer, which is a lazy farmer. And I've found if I don't mow my lawn, that the fencing is optional because the cows tend to stay where there's grass anyway.
Yeah. That's all I have.
Commissioner Tunison.
Good one. Getting back to seriousness here, with your life experiences and you've been able to relate, I think is just an invaluable thing. It's just so valuable. It's so valuable that you could relate to people. So I think you'd be a great asset on that board.
Thank you.
Commissioner Campbell.
Morning, Scott.
Morning.
Get Scott in there. Just that you're such a forward person and brings all this to light, that in itself says a lot about a man. And I know you're a little modest about what your experience brings compared to what somebody else may have learned educationally wise, but no education in the world can bypass experience. So I'm glad you're here.
Thank you.
Commissioner Hatfield.
In my experience, a lazy farmer doesn't make it very long, so I don't really think that was a very good description of your dedication to your profession. So
Well, I'm not a professional farmer, I'm a minister, so I'm not a very good businessman.
well,
Sorry, too.
thank you for your interest in this, and particularly thank you for your honesty and openness with so many folks that you've been able to share some wisdom with. So thank you.
Scott, you had mentioned one word that struck me was obstacles. What are the obstacles that you see or barriers for people who need mental health being connected to community mental health or connected to organizations that can help them?
Change and unpredictability is the biggest obstacle for everyone. So it's like coming to a brick wall that you consistently come to. And there are parents and brothers and sisters and neighbors, social workers, churches, psychologists, and what they've done is they've left you with, shovels, picks, maybe even a stick of dynamite because you're in that place. And so you see the wall and you have all these resources and tools, but you don't use them or you don't trust that they'll work, because when you're using, you can choose to be mired in concern about the obstacles, whatever they are, and not try to overcome them, because once you overcome them, stability might be the most scary thing you face, because it means that you're adding responsibilities. So the predictability makes someone safe enough to either take a drink and keep moving to the left along that wall, or to not take their meds or be med compliant, or to not consistently go to their therapy appointments, or to not engage in groups. Because even though the outcomes are bad, they can predict it, and in that chaos, they play by their own rules. As uncomfortable as it seems, and it may be, that anxiety is preferable to the anxiety of getting over that wall, but not knowing, being scared of what might happen over there that you've never seen. Like getting a job and keeping it for more than two weeks or 2 years, or still having to deal with the same voices, right? These things never go away. And so the obstacle is believing that you can learn to deal with them differently than you are now. You can't just get over it. The obstacle is that you're not trying to find new ways to deal with it. You just continue with the same behaviors because they're comfortable and predictable. And so obstacles really are the fear or anxiety of change.
Awesome. I appreciate your application. It was a lengthy resume. You've got a lot of experience in a lot of different things. So, no, that's fine. It's good to learn about people and see their background. So thank you. We'll make a decision at the end of our meeting, and we will let you know. Thank you. Next up, Dwayne Secord. Is Dwayne here this morning? Okay. He is not here. I know Dwayne has been a valuable member of that board. Just in talking with some board members and looking at that I think that's been his first or second term with Dwayne? Second term. So he's been another valuable member of that board. So next up, Fred Wagner. Good morning, Fred.
Good morning, yeah. Basically, my name is Fred Wagner. I've lived in the community on and off my whole life, except for a short stint down in Kansas after my wife died because my daughter said I wasn't taking care of myself, so I had to go down there and live with her. But I've been affiliated or as a consumer of Berry County Mental Health for quite some time, especially after my wife passed. And the place literally saved my life. I'm not gonna lie, I mean, if they wouldn't have been there to help me, I wouldn't be here today. And what I thought was so amazing about it was actually their business, their complaints department that took me, seen that I was in distress, made sure I got handled right then and there, you know. And for what I saw from that was a big group of people that are trying to help people. And the patient comes first in Berry County. That's the way they do it. And I want to give back to them for giving me my life. I've been in the military. I was a hospital food service specialist. I've spent time in and out of hospitals. I've made mistakes. I've been in prison. But through Berry County, I've seen that what I really want to do is make sure that no one else makes the same mistakes that I do. I know I can't stop them, but if I gave them the tools to not go down that path or help them be able to be treated so that they can open up, you know, more to their therapist so that they can deal with their problems. Since I've been there at Berry County, several patients have come up to me and talked to me about this or that with problems that they've found with the service. For an instance, there's one doctor there that I don't necessarily care for because of his attitude. But, you know, you gotta, when there's certain criteria that they have to be a doctor. So, you know, you gotta take them as they are. But the thing of it was, I was able to talk to other members of the staff and help them get to the other doctor where their treatment went much better. So I don't you know, and I'm a farmer. I've grown up on farms. I worked on farms, so I know a budget is a budget. But you gotta make the most bang for your buck, is what I like to do. And I look outside of the box and try to find local areas to help us too. I mean, I see a lot of the contracting and stuff goes to not local people, but, you know, they got the lower bid, you know, I understand that. However, I also think that if we were more open to the community as far as easiness, if you go down here to the hospital and you want mental health, you get treated almost like a criminal. You know, because they have their standards that they gotta put you through to make sure you're safe and make sure they're safe. I understand that, but not many people are they're gonna turn it down. Because, you know, if you get treated like you're a bad person and you know that you're a bad person because you're trying to get help or you're having a bad time, you know, that kind of puts up that blockade and says, nope, don't want nothing to do with it. What I want to do is help the community realize that the help is there and that it's open to everybody and everybody gets treated like an actual individual and a person. I have attended a board meeting or two. I am on the Berry County Consumers Advisory Mission, which is basically where we've got a bunch of consumers in there and we discuss the The biggest thing we've been discussing is the complaints department and what we have complaints on and what we can do to make it better or, whatever. And to try to deal with people differently. And that's the biggest thing that I've noticed with Berry County. They've got the flexibility to deal with hundreds of different attitudes, emotions, and help keep people calm and try to help them through the process. And so I just want to basically give back to my community, not just to make up for my mistakes, but just to feel good about myself. I'm not going to lie. I want to be able to be a prosperous and giving person. I've taken care of my wife when she had cancer up until she died, and then I needed help with them. I've taken care of my mother, and she had dementia for 2 years in my home. And to tell you, it was really hard to do that, but we became so close, and I learned so much about my mother then. It was just awesome. It was worth the experience. And I also took care of my father and my mother-in-law. But I can't, I'm always trying to help people, and this way I can help people where maybe at a greater span. That's just the way I am, so.
Thank you. Very good information. Appreciate your involvement and your willingness to serve. Commissioner Doster?
No questions.
Commissioner Carlton?
Nope, no questions.
Commissioner
Thanks
Getty?
for applying.
I appreciate your willingness. All of our candidates today have been very transparent about, their personal journeys, and that's not an easy thing in a room full of folks. So I appreciate your willingness to serve, and we have a hard decision.
Commissioner Smelker?
I feel the same way as Catherine. Thank you very much for your application. It was a very good application, and thank you.
Commissioner Tunison?
Thank you for applying. It takes a lot of courage to get up there and talk about your life sometimes, so.
It does.
And so I really appreciate you getting here today.
Not a problem.
Commissioner Campbell?
Morning, Fred. Thank you also for being here this morning. As everybody says, very difficult when we have to dive into our own personal failures or stuff in life, but I think that's the mystery of mental health. It's just a monster that's just unknown to so many and stuff, so appreciate you willing to be here.
There's stigmatism, and I feel that by sharing, even at the meetings that I have been at Berry County Mental Health, if I can help one other person or help them help one other person, it's all worth it. That's what I'm looking at is, yeah, it is nerve-wracking talking about your past and all that stuff, but the point is, if I can help somebody not to go through the stuff that I went through, I'm all for it.
Thank you, Fred.
Commissioner Hatfield?
Likewise, I want to thank you both for your interest in this position, for your openness, but particularly for everything that you've been doing in the community to try to help folks. So thank you.
No problem. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Fred, dive in a little bit to Community Mental Health Advisory Team. How long have you been involved with them?
I've been in there for I'm thinking at least a year this time, but I've been in it before, and then I had stopped services because I thought everything was good and it was time to move on. And, well, I had a little bit of a fall, so I went back and got back on the Consumers Advisory Committee with Tina. I don't know whether you know her, that works down there at Mental Health. She's part of it, and we've come up with quite a few different ideas. For instance, just to make it a little bit more relaxing in the break room, we put up a few little plastic plants just to make it look more homey, more relaxed and subtle. We've created music so that we've had music piped in so that their conversations behind the glass down there are overheard, because prior to that you could kind of hear bits and pieces, and that we want to make sure we stay with HIPAA and privacy and all that. So I just think it's an awesome setup. I do believe that the mental health system here in Berry County is one of the best. And from what I've understood, they have won awards and stuff, and they're leaders in different things. And to have a team like that, I want to be a part of that,
Awesome. I appreciate your application, your honesty, your service. We'll make a decision at the end of our meeting, and we will let you know soon.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, Fred. Dwayne Secord. Good morning, Dwayne.
Morning.
If you would, tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and your experience. Maybe give us a little bit of insight as to your experience being a board member on community mental health.
Yeah, I'm currently a private practicing clinician, so I do that about part-time. I have about 16 to 20 clients. I also am currently an adjunct professor at KCC. My history with mental health is I was a clinician at Berry County Mental Health for around 30 years, and I retired from there in 2016, and decided I wanted to still be part of the community in some way to support mental health, and so I joined the board 3 years ago. And so I've been on the board now. I serve as the treasurer of the board currently, and have enjoyed my experiences there. My goal has always been to end stigma. I think that's a big thing with mental health, because people tend not to seek services because of the stigma associated with mental illness. And so part of my goal as a board member is to always stamp out or knock out that stigma that is there. Also, as a treasurer on the board, I also want to make sure that they remain fiscally responsible, and I think our board does a very good job at that as well. So.
Awesome. Questions for Dwayne? Commissioner Doster?
No questions.
Commissioner Colton?
Well, you got the experience, you've been there, done great work. Thanks for that. I think you deserve reappointment.
Thank you, Mike.
Commissioner Getty?
I was on the board for a short stint with Dwayne, and again, he's a very valuable member of that board.
Commissioner Smelker?
Also, when I was on the board, Dwayne was very active in the board, and he is a good treasurer.
Awesome. Commissioner Tunison?
Board Dwayne, I want to thank you for your dedication.
Thank you. Thank you.
You deserve your appointment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Campbell?
Well, you make it easy this morning for you, so you got the experience, you've done well, and we're glad you're back.
Thank you.
Commissioner Hatfield?
Thank you. No questions.
Retired in 2016. I see you have the Callaway logo, so hopefully you're getting a little golf time in there.
I am. That's one of my enjoyable things in the
I
summer.
know the Michigan
especially.
weather hasn't quite been that good for it here lately, but
That's for sure.
looking at the board from two perspectives, both as a clinician and now as a board member, treasurer, are there areas that we can look at? Are there things being done either at the state level that we can improve upon here? I don't know if you have any ideas or insight, being on the board or being connected with community mental health for so long.
I think probably, obviously, there's a lot of state regulations that are part of mental health. Of course, there's a lot of Medicaid regulations as well. It would be nice if we could somehow, I know one of the issues that we've been struggling with the board is trying to hire personnel at times, because we're kind of a rural county and it's difficult to bring people in. And, you know, salaries aren't as high as probably corresponding counties. But it'd be nice if somehow we could, and I know Rich has been working on it a little bit, to loosen some of the regulations so that we can maybe do some more hiring of people in regards to maybe taking away some of the credentialing that sometimes is needed. So I know that that's being worked on, but that's an area that I think could always be improved on, and I don't know if I have any answers. We've been really struggling with that, and we continue to maintain, I think, a good staff there.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate your service and your somewhat retirement, so I definitely appreciate what you've done for community mental health over the years. We'll make a decision here at the end of the meeting, and we'll let you know.
Okay, thanks, Commissioner.
Thank you, Dwayne. Commissioners, if you don't mind, we have one interview for planning and zoning. Can we interview Joseph before we take a break? Okay. Joseph Kammerzind. Good morning, Joseph.
Good morning. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to be here.
Yeah, appreciate you giving us a little bit about your background and why you see yourself being a good fit for planning and zoning here in Berry County.
Yes, so my wife and I moved our family to Berry County in 2022, and we were immediately struck with the sense of community and the heritage of the county. It's basically what we loved about the area. And so that sense of community also drove me to want to help out within my local community. So I looked at Johnson Township, where we currently live, and that's where I found out about the openings for the boards and the need for people to serve on the board. I have about 20 years of experience in process management, business management, and accounting. So I'm currently an accounting manager. I went to Western Michigan University for my bachelor's, and I got my MBA a couple years ago through Southern Indiana University. Yeah, I'm not sure what else I could include there as far as specific to the county planning. Currently in my role with MEI, I'm working with our engineers to develop the infrastructure build-out of our internet infrastructure. Worked with Bronson Hospital quite a bit on budgeting boards, led a team to find efficiencies and additional revenues throughout the building, too close, too far, throughout the hospital. And we ended up generating $5 million of efficiencies and additional revenue, which helped us build the cancer center that they're building there now. As well as bring on new providers and help alleviate a little bit of the staff burnout.
Awesome.
Yep.
Very impressive resume. Appreciate your work with Berry County in Delton because we need help with broadband in Berry County, so keep up the good work there for sure. So, Commissioner Hatfield is our planning and zoning. He sits on the planning and zoning committee as well. So if you would like to start, questions for Joseph?
Well, that was a switch. Appreciate your interest. When it comes to the issues that planning and zoning are normally dealing with, any particular interests or experiences that you want to talk about?
I think some of the challenges that I've seen within my experience are, again, the infrastructure of the internet. That's been a driving thing across the nation as well as in the rural communities. So understanding how we can best build out those capabilities as well as other infrastructure needs throughout the rural communities. And then also balancing the heritage of Berry County. We're situated between three large cities that are ever growing. Grand Rapids coming out down to, I guess I call it Grand Rapids, but coming down to Caledonia, building out quite a bit. So just trying to I guess my experience with budgeting and the managing aspect of business, I feel would be helpful in helping develop the plans for that ultimate progression.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Well, we appreciate your interest in this.
Thank you.
Commissioner Campbell.
Good morning, Joseph.
Good morning.
You have a great resume.
Thank you.
You seem like the right guy, and we do need somebody with extra knowledge on broadband, as that's a huge issue in our county, which we need to get. So I'm glad you're here. Thank you.
Commissioner Tunison.
Thanks for applying. Have you had a chance to look at the master plan or anything for Berry County?
No, I haven't.
Anyway, getting back to that subject you're talking about, like, we know that the expansion is coming towards our way. We want to try to save our rural identity. So,
Yep.
elaborate a little bit on how you feel about that.
So I think it's important to save the rural identity, like you said. Again, I think that's what makes Berry County a great place to live. And I think it also needs to be balanced with the expansion that is coming and the need for the infrastructure. Figuring out how to best accomplish that pairing with from a budgeting standpoint, I know that's one of the challenges in rural counties is trying to budget to have the infrastructure, the roads and everything, be able to handle the additional traffic and all of that. But then additionally seeing the expansion of factories, so like the one down in Marshall and stuff like that. And so hearing from the townships what's best for them and what fits best within the overall plan of Berry County, I think is going to be important as we see those moving out. I think there's a solar farm coming in down by us in Johnston Township as well. So just understanding that a lot of outside entities are looking for that rural footprint, and then figuring out how to best plan that for the future, so that we don't, so that stuff is organized in a planned manner.
What I'm getting at is that, like with solar farms, trying to keep them located in the same area so we're not gobbling up blocks of land to farm.
Indeed.
Solar farms.
Yep. That's one of my concerns as well. Is I think we're surrounded by quite a few of the consumers' properties, and so just trying to make sure that if they do come in, that it's in a responsible manner, that doesn't just kind of over encroach local farmers as well. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Commissioner Smoker.
Have no questions. Thank you very much for your application, Joseph.
Commissioner Getty.
I appreciate you applying, and I think your perspective from business and accounting will be an add to the diversity of the Planning Commission and help them make better decisions, because with any development, it becomes a balance with property rights and the desires of the community.
Thank
So
you.
it's not an easy position, so thank you for being willing to serve in that way.
Thank you.
Commissioner Colton.
I've been on that board, and I think you're going to fit in just great.
Thank you.
Commissioner Doster.
So how long have you lived in Berry County?
So we moved here last May.
Last
April.
May?
Mm-hmm. Yep, so just about a year.
Have you ever been to a planning and zoning meeting
Not within Berry County, in Kalamazoo.
in Kalamazoo? That's where
That's
you were
where I'm
from originally?
Yep.
And what caused you to go to a meeting there?
General interest was the first one, and then the second, that's kind of how I started, was general interest. And then in the community where I was, which was Cooper Township, again, they were kind of on the outskirts of Kalamazoo, and one of the projects that they had was a sewer project. And again, they were looking to expand that because of the growing community there, the growing number of households. They felt that they needed a sewer, but unfortunately, the budget dollars weren't there, and the boots on the ground planning wasn't there to roll that out. So that's, as far as I know, is something they're still working on.
Was that something you supported then, or?
I had mixed feelings about it. The way that it was introduced wasn't. It didn't make sense financially. I think it was going to cause a large increase in the millage, as well as a burden to a lot of the homeowners, and so it wasn't a balanced need for the entire community. So there were certain areas that definitely would have benefited from it, but throughout the entire township, it was. I think it was a little too soon for that.
Have you, looking at your background, have you ever had much dealing with boards where there's lots of unhappy people at them?
I've sat in some difficult budget meetings, working with various department heads, working through some complex issues there. I have not sat on a board before.
Okay. I have one suggestion, if you get on this board, and you're doing a little better with me, but in order to have respect for the people that come before you, you have to talk a whole lot louder.
Understood.
Because they will become irate if they cannot understand what you're saying.
Okay.
And these zoning boards, I've been on the county zoning board, I'm on Prairieville zoning board. Mm-hmm. If they cannot figure out what it is that you're saying or where it's coming from, something will come into their head as to what you're saying.
Okay.
So that's just a word for the wise. Thank you.
No. Joseph, I have no further questions. Like I said, very impressive resume. I appreciate you be willing to apply your professional expertise to Berry County Planning and Zoning. It'll be a lot to learn, and we'll get you a copy of the plan through 2040, which will be some great reading to put you to sleep. But it is an impressive document they've worked hard on. So outlining what's going to happen in Berry County, areas for growth, urban development. There's a very well thought out plan behind it, and I think you'd fit in with that. A detailed mind is good on that board. So thank you very much. We'll make a decision at our end of our meeting, and we'll contact you shortly thereafter and let you know.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Have a great day. Commissioners, we're going to take a 5 to 7 minute recess, and then we'll be back and complete our agenda, starting with Ms. Shia Rose.
Yeah, Michelle, get that close, or Rick will be up there.
Testing.
Do not make Rick mad. Speak into the mic.
I heard the public service announcement this morning.
There you go. We are back in session. Next on our agenda, Mashaya Rose, equalization reports and resolution to approve the 2023 equalization values.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So I'm here today to present to you the equalization report. And as you may or may not know, the Board of Commissioners is tasked with the responsibility of approving the equalized values in April of each year. It's a long and complex process, but just to recap the last couple months, basically, what has happened is the local assessors have established individual assessments and taxable values, presented those to their local Board of Review. The local Board of Review made necessary changes based on appeals or anything that was brought before them, and then the assessment rolls were handed off to me at the end of March. So what I do is I go through those assessment rolls and I ensure that each of the classifications for each township are assessed at 50% of market value. And if they're not, then I apply an equalization factor. This year, we did have one township that had an equalization factor. That was for Maple Grove Township, and I will get to that process once we get to that part in the report. So, I will go through my very long and dull equalization report with you. We'll start with the first couple pages. This is just a breakdown of each of the classifications for Berry County. We have residential, commercial, industrial, and agricultural in the real classification, and then the personal property is a combination of industrial, commercial, and utility. Obviously, no surprise to anybody, the residential class is the largest in value for both equalized and taxable value. No significant changes this year compared to last year. Am I being loud enough in the mic?
Yes.
Okay.
Very good.
Okay, so page 3 and 4 is the equalized value and taxable values by unit, organized by largest to smallest. Thornapple Township obviously has the largest equalized value and taxable value in the county. Page 5 is a breakdown of equalized and taxable values for the whole county by year, starting in 2012. And you can see that there is a rather large increase from 2022 to 2023 in the equalized value. Page 6 is a new report I added this year, and this is just for informational purposes, so we can look at trends for each classification in the county. You'll see that the residential real class is the most consistent with increases every year. The most inconsistent is going to be your personal property, which makes sense when you consider the different types of exemptions that are introduced periodically. So you'll see that actually seen a negative increase or a negative decrease this year. And that was most likely due to a lot of the exemptions that were introduced this year.
Okay, could you explain that a little further? What constitutes personal property then?
So personal property is typically the commercial industrial, so it would be tables, shelves, it's not the real property, so it's not the building and the land, it's anything other than the building and land. And in Michigan, residential personal property is exempt from taxation, so that's why, you don't receive taxes for your beds and things like that. So it's primarily businesses that are taxed for personal property.
Okay, and then, so like in 2016, that just plummeted to?
So over the last decade, there's been a lot of personal property exemptions passed by legislation. So we had the small business taxpayer exemption, which means that any businesses that have less than $80,000 in true cash value were exempt from paying personal property taxes starting in 2014.
Okay.
In this past year, that actually increased. We call it a medium taxpayer exemption that increased to $180,000. And then for industrial personal property, EMPP, for short is what we call it, those exemptions started in 2015 and 2016. So that's where you're going to see that drastic change in 2016. And then in 2023, a lot of the industrial personal property became exempt again, so.
Okay. So it isn't that there's less personal property at those times, it's just that
Correct. There's exemptions.
There's a classification that the state has made that eliminates you having to worry about that.
Correct,
Okay.
correct. And that's why you'll see in that trend, it's a little bit more unpredictable than the other classifications.
All right, thank you.
On page 7 through 12, this is going to just be a breakdown of the percent changes in both equalized value and taxable value. The first one is a yearly change from 2022 to 2023. You'll see for the county as a whole, the equalized value increased by 16%. So that does not necessarily translate to that's how much tax revenue is going to increase by, because our taxable value, which is what we actually receive tax revenue on, only increased by 7.81%. And that is actually less than the inflation rate this year of 7.9%. So I am not predicting that there will be any millage rollbacks for Berry County. I have not calculated anything for the individual taxing entities, so I don't know if that's true for those yet, but I know for Berry County, we will not see a millage rollback.
So like Berry Township had a 23.73% increase in SEV?
Correct, yes. So that would be market value. Now, those increases can contribute to just increases in the market as well as new construction. So it's a combination of both. But yes, this was one of the largest increases that we've seen probably since Proposal A 1994.
In both SEV and taxable?
Yes. So for the first time since 1994, Proposal A was passed in 1994, put a limitation to the increases in taxable values. So taxable value can only increase by the rate of inflation or 5%, whichever is less. So for the first time, the inflation rate exceeded 5%, so the cap on the taxable value increase was 5% to individual taxable values. So that was new this year. And it benefited the taxpayers because they didn't see that inflation rate increase. They only seen the 5% increase.
Will that carry over from year to year? Or is that just
So
in
the
that
inflation
market year?
rate changes every year.
Okay.
Last year, I believe it was 3.3%. This year was 7.9%. I don't know what next year's is going to be, but yeah, that changes every year. It's determined by the state of Michigan.
So they won't take the 2.9% they lost that were capped at 5%, that won't apply, that won't roll into the next year?
As far as the increases go, we're not going to lose that increase, no.
Okay.
So any increase that we receive next year will be on top of the increase that we see this year.
Okay.
When you figure the equalized value, like in Berry Township, for example, is the building of their new school, does that affect the equalized value of the
No,
the
because
township?
the
not
equals
taxable.
value does not include any exemptions.
Okay.
This is only ad valorem parcels, so parcels that are taxed at the normal tax rate.
Okay. And like the infrastructure of the water drainage project for Crooked Lake, the buildings that are being built for that and so forth, that does not affect this either because they're exempt, right?
So the infrastructure isn't going to affect the individual equalized value or taxable value. Equalized value is a tabulation of the market value. So anything that does impact market value, it could potentially, you see a small increase in the total equalized value, but it won't affect the taxable value. Taxable value can only be changed with new additions to the property itself.
Okay, so what's responsible mostly is the building of new homes, or?
That and the market value, for example, I purchased a property this past year, and when the market was very high, and I believe just the market values have changed drastically. The people who owned my home before purchased the home, I want to say 5 or 6 years before me, and the value at that time was significantly lower. So it's just the demand in the market that is causing these values to
So an
increase.
increase in the value of the homes
Yep.
would be a major
Yep.
cause of this?
Yeah.
Okay.
I would say it was not abnormal to see a 20% increase in individual homes in their values over the past year.
Okay.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Which is significant.
Yeah.
So that's why you're seeing such a large increase, because that's what the market has done over the last 2 years.
Also, a lot of lake properties down in that Berry Township. So a lot of those lake, when they're resold, prices have gone, like she just said, from here to here, just in that time frame.
Yep. So that's what we're seeing here is the yearly change from 2022 to 2023 in the taxable value percent change of 7.8%. I also included a graph of these changes, and the townships are in order from highest taxable value percent change to lowest percent change. So you'll see in some instances, the highest taxable value percent change is not necessarily the highest market value change. And that's a result of Proposal A, where we see a lot of the equalized value change at a higher rate, where the taxable value is changing at a lower rate, is probably just because there wasn't a lot of sales in that township to make up for those uncappings. Page 9 is the 5-year change. So the average over the last 5 years in equalized value is 7.79% for the whole county, and in taxable value is 4.97% for the whole county. Now, I do want to point out that just because it said 4.97% in taxable value change does not necessarily equate to the tax revenue. So our tax revenue has not necessarily increased 5% every year, again, because of millage rollbacks. So, and I believe we've received millage rollbacks for several years in a row. And then, again, the 10-year change. So this is 7.28 and 4.47 in equalized and taxable value, respectively. Our largest increases in equalized value over the last 10 years was Orangeville Township, Irving Township, and Carlton Township. Those are highlighted in green, and then the lowest 3 are highlighted in red too. So you can look at those quite quickly.
Could you explain what you mean by the rollback?
Yes, so the millage rollback, which I will be presenting to you guys, I believe that's in June, basically says that each taxing entity, the schools, the county, local units, cannot collect more in taxes than the rate of inflation, with the exception of new construction.
This was the Headley Amendment, then?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Well, yes, it's all wrapped up into one. And
Okay.
so sometimes what happens is if the tax revenue is expected to be more than the rate of inflation, I have to apply millage rollback to reduce the millage so that the amount of tax revenue collected does not exceed the rate of inflation, with the exception of new construction.
And the rate of inflation
Correct.
was, for this year, was 5%, was less than 5%.
So the actual rate of inflation used for millage rollbacks is 7.9%, but taxable value increases were limited to 5% this year. So that's probably why we're seeing taxable value increases less than the rate of inflation.
Okay.
Does that make sense? It's complicated. So page 13 through page 15 shows the trends and the gap between equalized and taxable value. This is the result of Proposal A. So this means that the market value, the equalized value, there's no limitation to the amount of increases or decreases that we can see to the equalized value each year. The taxable value, there is a limitation, 5% or the rate of inflation, whichever is less. What happens is there's a gap that is created as market values continue to increase at a higher rate than the taxable value. And so we'll see that the agricultural class is impacted the most significantly, which makes sense because there's more exemptions in place for the ag properties. Those ag properties can remain capped in their taxable value if there's a transfer of ownership that occurs, as long as the property continues to be used for agricultural purposes. And so that's why that gap is so large. And then you'll see that that gap on page 15 has been increased drastically this past year. What this might mean is that even when we start, if we do start to see a decrease in equalized value, it doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to also see a decrease in taxable value. Because there's such a large gap there that when market value starts to decrease, taxable value still has the opportunity to increase. Fortunately, we're not in a situation like that, but we may be in the next few years, so.
When you talk about cap, you talking about transfer of property to family members?
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct,
Okay.
yep. The next pages 16 through 32 are a summary of the recommended county equalized values and trends for each township. I'm going to direct you to page 25 of Maple Grove Township, because they are the township that is receiving an equalization factor. So the rest of the reports are very similar. At the top, almost there. There we are. Oh, that's okay. So, yep, so at the top of page 25, you'll see a breakdown of the classification for each township. So for example, in Maple Grove, the residential class takes up 54.31% of the entire equalized value for that township. On the left side of the table, you'll see all the assessed value information and the number of parcels for each class. The 2022 equalized value, the 2023 assessed values as approved by the local board of review, and then the recommended equalization factor. And most of the time, the equalization factor would be 1. But in this case, for the commercial class, I am applying an equalization factor to bring that commercial class down to the 50% assessment to market value ratio. On the right side is the taxable value information. Taxable values are not subject to equalization, so there's no factors necessary for those. I'm going to skip ahead again to page 33 of the report. And then what I've done here is I've recapped any equalization factors applied. So the agricultural properties on page 33, you'll see that all the equalization factors are 1, which means that we are accepting the local units' equalized values. You'll also see on the right side, the largest township, or the largest agricultural township is Woodland Township, so they hold the most agricultural value in the county. So I've done that for each classification. On the next page, page 34, you'll see the commercial recap, and then you'll see that all of the townships have received a 1 for the equalization factor except for Maple Grove, where I've adjusted the entire classification, the entire commercial class by a negative 207,000. And then for commercial, obviously, I don't think this comes to any surprise to anybody that the city of Hastings has the largest commercial class. Again, for industrial, same thing. And then I've done that again for residential. Just some interesting facts here. Yankee Springs and Thornapple Township have the largest residential classes in the county. But no equalization factors were necessary for any of the other classes.
Just so folks are clear, the village of Middleville within Thornapple Township accounts for a lot of that value, especially the commercial.
Correct. Thornapple values include the village of Middleville. Yep, thank you.
Why is that? They're incorporated, aren't they?
A general law village, so it's still.
Oh, general law village?
It's, the way it was explained to me is it's more like a layer, right? So the village sits on the layer of Thornapple Township. Village residents pay both village and township taxes.
Correct.
And the city of Hastings is an actual city.
Correct. So the city of Hastings residents
Okay.
only pays taxes to the city of Hastings. Yep. Thank you. And then a personal property recap. if I'm going through this too quickly, just let me know. So we have, on page 38, I have organized the data to come up with an average value per parcel for each unit, and then for the county for each classification. So for example, the average agricultural value per parcel for Berry County is $406,000. This is the actual value, not assessed value. So in case that needed clarification there. So I've done that for each of the ag, commercial, industrial, and residential classes. These reports are important because a lot of times government agencies, when they're applying for grants, they need this type of information. So that's why it's included in this report. On page 42, I've done the same thing, but for taxable value. And so I've provided the average taxable value for each unit and for the county. This report is typically used by government agencies who are looking to levy a new tax rate. They can determine how that would impact the average taxpayer. So if they're looking at, trying to get an additional millage, they can say, if we're looking at the residential class, for example. So if the county wanted to introduce a new millage, we would be able to say, use that $80,439 value to determine how it would affect the average residential taxpayer in Berry County. And this information is also used for various types of grants as well. Next, on page 46, we have the top 20 taxpayers, organized on page 46 by equalized value, and then on page 47 by taxable value. This is informational only, and it is typically used, I get this report requested from different bonding agencies. They use this report to see how stable our tax base is. That's typically what I use it for. So most of my requests come from the schools when they are looking at getting new bonds. I do want to point out that this information is based on how the assessors have typed in the ownership information, and so they are limited to whatever is on the deed. So for example, we have Consumers Energy and Consumers Energy Company listed as two different taxpayers, but of course they're obviously under one umbrella, but that's how they are entered into the system. So I just wanted to make that clear. And then we also have a tabulation of county equalized values beginning on page 4. This is a summary of all the values that are already in this report, organized by township, and then within each school district, and then within each class of agricultural, commercial, industrial, residential, and personal property. This is used for budgeting purposes typically. And this information is stated again, but just differently, organized by school districts, so that when the schools need this information, they don't have to go through and individually tabulate all the values themselves. I do the same thing for taxable value, beginning on page 53. And then this type of report is obviously used for budgeting purposes for each taxing entity. On page 58, I've organized the data for taxable values only, and this data is organized by non-PRE, which stands for principal residence exemption, and commercial personal and industrial personal. And the reason I do this is because it impacts the amount of school operating taxes that each of the entities can levy. Not the county, but for schools. So this information is important to them. And then I use it as the equalization director to report to the state. They use these values to determine how much reimbursement we'll receive for personal property. So that summarizes all of the ad valorem values, which is what we equalize. But I've also included information on industrial facilities tax parcels, IFTs, and for DNR parcels. We receive tax on those, but at different rates, so they're not included in the ad valorem. And then finally, Form L4024, which is the required form which summarizes all the values in this report. And it is the official form that is required to be signed by the chair of the Board of Commissioners, the clerk, and myself. So when we finalize the values, we send it to the state for state equalization.
Fantastic. Lot of
Very
numbers,
dull.
a lot of paper. I appreciate your thoroughness in putting graphs together, because to look at numbers is somewhat daunting, but to see them graph forms comparatively makes it a lot easier to digest all that. Questions for Mishaya?
I just have one. You got any idea what the average cost of per acre in Berry County, how much it's risen in the last, say, I don't know how many years, but I mean, at one time, let's just say it was, $3,500 an acre. I didn't know if you had an idea.
I don't know historically how much those have increased, but we do have studies in our office. We separate the county by quarters, so it's different for each quarter of the county. But yes, we do have studies on those. I don't know which value belongs to what quarter off the top of my head.
No, I'm just curious. I'm sure it's risen considerably.
Yes, but we do have that information available for any residential taxpayer or any taxpayer in the county. They can request that report from us, and we can provide that to them.
Additional questions?
Just a comment, the school districts, we have 12 school districts.
Yes.
Jurisdictions. It really just, I think, hits home to me how diverse our county is, and I think to our planning commissioner candidate, we're pulled in a lot of different directions with school districts.
Yes, and all those school districts want different things from me. But so that's why I've tried to compile it to the best I can and I try to make it very easy for the different taxing entities, but mainly the school districts are the ones that have different rates that they're dealing with all the time. Mm-hmm.
It makes for complicated reporting, I'm sure.
Yes.
7.9% is quite a jump. I mean, year over year, that's quite a jump. Hopefully.
Yes.
I mean, you like to see it from a tax base go up, but you don't like to see it from a taxpayer base go up. So,
Correct.
there's two sides to that, but.
Correct.
So,
Well, and I would like to make sure that we know that that's not just to the individual taxpayer, so that also includes a lot of the additions that we've seen on the northwest side of our county, up in Thornapple Township and Irving Township. They've had a lot of new construction and residential additions that were added. So that is also included in that percent change. Mm-hmm.
Additional questions? Okay. The chair would entertain a motion to recommend to the Board of Commissioners adoption of Resolution 23-09, a resolution to accept the 2023 equalization values.
So moved, Doster.
Support.
Motion by Doster, support by Getty, to recommend to the Board of Commissioners adoption of Resolution 23-09, a resolution to accept 2023 equalized values. Further discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mishaya. Fantastic job. Carrie Selleck. Good morning, Carrie.
Good morning.
Good to see you again.
Good to see you too.
Talking about the 2024 budget already.
Yes, because we have to submit ours this month.
If you would like to hit the highlights for us on this, I know there are some pretty substantial increases in.
There are. So the highlights, and I know some of you are new. So MIDC came about, we started our program the end of 2018, really got going in 2019, but it came about because of the disparities in resources and funding between Prosecutor's Office and Indigent Defense Council. We're not on an even playing field yet, but we're doing a lot better in terms of resources and access. So we have certain standards that were part of all of that legislation. And Standard 8 is attorney reimbursement or attorney compensation. We have 7, and this is contract attorneys. This is not my staff. It's not myself. It's not Mr. Renner. It's not any other attorneys that may actually be county employees. This is simply our contract attorneys. So Standard 8 requires minimum payments. It requires hourly payments. We have used a flat fee system since before our office was created. That is highly discouraged, and I understand why. Highly discouraged and not going to be allowed anymore by MIDC. And I say with that caveat, you can certainly try to do that, but it's an automatic audit for Berry County, not something I will ever put Berry County in the position to do. And so the substantial increase is really how much money we need to pay the contract attorneys. We are going to be required to pay them by hour for the cases that they handle. With that being said, we worked with our MIDC representative, because that's obviously something new for us, to see kind of what that number would look like, because I have no idea, and I know Ms. Kraus and I balked at the amount in our budget because it's out of our comfort zone. But we took the caseloads over the last 4 years, kind of averaged them out as to the different types of cases that we have, and average time spent on cases. It's difficult to say from one quarter to the next what type of caseload we're gonna have. In the first quarter of this year, we did 280 arraignments. Now, that includes misdemeanors, felonies, probation violations. That includes all of it. This last quarter that we just ended last week, at the end of March, we did 360 arraignments. So realistically, we took kind of an average of our last 4 years that we've been in existence. Type of cases, time it takes on cases. Obviously, murder cases take a substantial amount of time, more than a retail fraud third degree, which is what you'd consider a simple shoplifting charge. Kind of averaged those out, and these are the numbers that we came up with the MIDC representative that we may need. Now, I have a caseload, which wasn't envisioned when we started, but I like to be in a courtroom, so I have a caseload. I do most of the probation violations, so our contract attorneys aren't doing those. Mr. Renner does most of the misdemeanors. So our contract attorneys, for the most part, are not doing those. Obviously, there's conflicts, there's co-defendants, there's reasons we can't represent everybody, so you're always gonna have to have contract attorneys, no matter what. So that's the biggest jump. Is the attorney compensation, and as you see, I mean, it went from $428,000 to just over $1 million. But that's because we're paying by hour, and I mean, we have, in the past, we have everything from a simple trespassing charge to murder cases. We never know what crimes are going to come up, we don't know what's going to be charged, so we kind of plan for everything, so that we have the funds to meet it. I know Ms. Kraus, Roberta Kraus, my administrative assistant, had 25 years in banking. She is my numbers person. She goes through all of this. She keeps us on right on task. We have always had unexpended funds at the end of the year, and essentially all the state does is then subtract that from the number they'll give us the following year. I guess the good thing, and I was hearing her talk about inflation, the good thing with us is by statute, the county portion, the local share portion, is the CPI index, but no more than 3% of what the original amount is. And so the amount that we paid last year, or that we were given from the county last year, is going to be the exact same amount that the county is going to be required to give us in 2024. That is not going to change. That's the $233,000. The bulk, the majority of these funds will come from the state grant. In addition, because our office exists in Berry County, one of the reimbursable expenses through the state grant is reimbursement to the county for our office being in existence for the operating costs. So that's where that $43,000 comes from. That's given back to the county over the course of the year. So realistically, it's the attorney pay that is throwing our budget way up where it used to be.
And I guess the question is, when you're at 428,000 and a change from the state, I'm assuming, takes it to?
It is. It's required, mandated. We have to pay by the hour now. The 428 was based on, our attorneys have always been paid flat fee. Like if you've been on the contract for 10 years, you were making about $40,000 a year, and you would get 4 equal, or we do it monthly payments now, but you get monthly payments to equal that amount. The reality is, defense attorneys have been woefully underpaid for decades. This is to incentivize people to take indigent defense cases. It's difficult to find people to take these cases. We have 7 attorneys on our contract now. We used to have 10. They are time consuming. They can be difficult. We are not seeing people on their best days. We're often seeing people on their worst days. It takes a toll on you. In regards to that, you may spend, a couple of hours on a misdemeanor larceny charge, whereas on a felony larceny charge, you could spend 10 hours working on a case trying to resolve it. We have excellent attorneys on our contracts. They've all been on our contract long-term, and they're very good at what they do. The state determined this, it's through the statute as well, part of MIDC, that this is how you have to pay people, and they give you the minimum hourly rates. Flat fee agreement, or flat fee payments, most counties don't have those anymore. When MIDC came into existence, most counties went to an hourly rate. We were allowed to keep our flat fee rate, knowing that once Standard 8 came into play and was adopted, we wouldn't be able to do that anymore.
Okay.
And we've spoken to our attorneys about it, and they understand. It's going to be, and it's not, they tell us I spent 10 hours and we hand them a check. There's an invoice they have to fill out for every case. They have to tell us what they did on every case to justify the expenses that they're giving, because everything has to be reported to the state.
There's an auditing system for that?
There is.
Is there a standard that says, hey, a simple theft versus a felony versus?
There is not, and I will tell you why. They had talked about, cap, larceny in a building, cap it at 5 hours. We're only gonna pay you to spend 5 hours on it. Well, that does not take into account the demeanor of the client, their history, maybe the work. It could be, and I found this over 20 years, I've had clients who are charged with murder who are much more cooperative and easier to work with than a client who's charged with the possession of methamphetamine or charged with the larceny in a building charge. So there's no caps on that, but we do keep a tight rein. And again, the attorneys know it's in our professional rules of conduct. If you try to take advantage of the system, you'll lose your bar card. And nobody's gonna put that at risk. But, meeting with your clients, we already have to do that under Standard 1. You have to meet with your clients in a specific amount of time. You have to go to trainings. You have to do all of these other things. We know what a typical case looks like, and if anything jumps out at us as something that is, because all of these will be reviewed in our office before submission for payment, something that looks out of the ordinary will have to be explained.
Yeah, as a taxpayer, the 428,000 makes sense. When you double it to over $1 million, you scratch your head as a taxpayer and go, the
do.
state's mandating this, but.
They are. They are.
Oh, well.
They are. It is, and it's gonna take some adjustment, from us. It's gonna take more work from us, making sure that we're looking at invoices, making sure everything passes muster. But again, we have 7 very good attorneys who are not gonna take advantage of the system. There's some other counties that struggle with that, but there's also, we have agreements with other counties. I have looked at other counties. They've sent me a billing on a case saying, hey, does this look okay to you? Does this look reasonable? So we have that mechanism as well. Is there anything in here that looks out of place to you? I've done that for other counties, and so we have those agreements with other counties to help out in that regard as well.
Questions from commissioners?
Is there a standard rate per hour? How does
Well,
this work?
What's listed on here is the state is requiring misdemeanors at $118.21 per hour. They're requiring $130.03 per hour. They're requiring $141.82 per hour minimum. Those are the minimums. We rounded numbers because we don't want to deal in a bunch of cents. We rounded numbers, and every year they are going to do a cost of living increase and adjustments to those numbers. And so really our rounding up kind of takes that into consideration already, at least for the first year. And realistically, after the first year, we'll kind of have a better idea, because as we listed in here, some of our figures are, things that we want in our budget. We're looking to add that 3rd attorney to our office. that third attorney then has a full caseload. And what a full caseload means in terms of MIDC at this point, that standard hasn't been adopted, but that could be up to 400 misdemeanors, it could be up to 150 felonies. So that third attorney in our office, once we go through the process, and if that happens, they would get most of the assignments on any given day, and then you go to the contract attorneys. Now, will we give an attorney 10 felony cases in one day? Probably not. That's a lot. You want quality representation. And so, but we still have those contract attorneys who then would get assignments after that, because we have some days that are heavier on our caseload and some days that are lighter. It just depends. And arraignments are hard to predict.
When will you know if his budget's approved?
We are required to submit it to MIDC this month. We're going to work that through with our MID. We have to do everything on egrams now. And so they vote on it in June at the MIDC commissioners meeting.
Okay, and part of the cost of that is an additional attorney in office.
It is, and we're gonna go through the county process to do all of that. We just didn't have time to do all of that before our budget is due. So those are best case ones. If for some reason the county doesn't approve that, then we don't have to, it's already worked in if they do approve it, and if they don't approve it, then we don't have to worry about it coming back and asking for different funding.
Additional questions?
Yeah. I guess what I was going to ask is, wouldn't it make more sense for you to have more employees in your office and less reliance on the contract attorneys?
And I think that's, when we started this, because I was on the group that kind of put our plan together back in 2018, we weren't sure exactly how funding and, everything with the state, they weren't sure how things were going to work. And so we weren't sure we would be able to accommodate a full public defender's office. I think in the next 5 years, that's where we're going. I think we're going to have transitioning to a more traditional public defender's office. You're still always going to have contract attorneys for conflicts and stuff like that. But I do think that that's where we're going over the next few years, because to me, it's more fiscally responsible.
The conflicts, though, they don't really occur all that often, do they?
They do. We have a lot of co-defendant cases. We have some cases
And then,
where.
so neither one of only one of a co-defendant could be represented through your office?
Right, we could only do one, the other one would
Can you
have to
ever
go.
share someone else's, another county's? Could you pawn off a prosecutor to?
I know, like the process, I think what you're talking about, like the prosecutor's office, if they have a conflict, they go to.
Another county.
They go to another county.
Yeah.
And I don't know how their agreement with them works that way. We have not done that, but I have done that for Eaton County. They had a conflict, but my client in Eaton County had gone through 4 contract attorneys over there, and they didn't have anybody else left, which is unusual. That's not the norm. And so I had agreed to represent the individual in Eaton County for them. So there is that possibility. The conflicts are really co-defendants. There could be a case where, in terms of misdemeanor cases, we have 2 people who've been charged with domestic violence against each other. We can only represent one of them. The other person has to be represented by someone else, because that would be a conflict. So, so like I said, we'll always, I think we've talked about this a lot in our office, kind of where, and our office keeps evolving. It looks much different today than we envisioned it in 2018, and it keeps evolving, and I think that's where we're going to end up. I think we're gonna end up a more traditional public defender's office, and we really try to model, like when we do wages and all that, we look at the prosecutor's office because there should be that equality there, because that was the impetus behind, is to make sure there's the equality, that we're having the same funds and the same resources that others are having. And I will say, some of the contract budget, so, we have to pay for investigators, we have to pay for experts, and I know, I don't know how the prosecutor's office, I assume they have to pay for experts, but they don't have to pay for investigators because they have every police officer in the county as their investigator. So we have some expenses in that terms that they don't have. We also have as I noted in there, one case that an individual, the client, was sentenced before he was 18. I think everybody's probably heard about juvenile lifer laws in terms of murder cases, but there's another set of cases, the Stovall cases, where for juveniles or people under the age of 18, they're getting resentencings similar to juvenile lifers now because they were given life without any term of years, and the Supreme Court has said you can't do that. So we then have added expenses for experts and investigators and all of these other resources that the Supreme Court says we need to have in order for the resentencing to be fair. So we only have one of those cases here in Berry County. And actually, Mr. Renner in my office has appellate experience. He's going to be handling that case. So it's not like we're having to pay anyone per hour to handle that case. He's going to handle it, but the experts and investigators, they have us budget about $40,000 to do that. And we have one juvenile murder case that is also facing a resentencing. That's being handled by the State Appellate Defender's Office, but we're required to pay for the experts, investigators, and all of that. So.
Daunting.
It is, and we strive to be extremely fiscally responsible, and I can tell you, Roberta and I had a heart attack when we saw the numbers because it's not something we're used to, but I think after the first year we'll have a better grip on that, and again, if we do end up transitioning more towards the traditional public defender's office with more in-house cases, then that number would decrease.
Okay. Further questions? Hearing none, the chair would entertain a motion to recommend to the Board of Commissioners approval for submission to the Michigan Indigent Defense Commission, MIDC, of the attached proposed fiscal year 2024 Public Defender's Office budget.
So moved.
Motion by Smelker, support by Hatfield, to recommend to the Board of Commissioners approval for submission to the Michigan In Defense Commission, MIDC, of the attached proposed fiscal year 2024 Public Defender's Office budget. Further discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Thank you, Carrie.
Thank you.
We okay to continue, John?
I'm good.
All right.
We just
But
lost
we
a
just lost
commissioner.
one.
He'll be back.
Yeah, he'll be back.
Jim Dull. Resolution pledging full faith and credit for payment of Duncan Lake No. 2 Drainage District bonds.
Got me waiting for Mike.
Go ahead and get started.
Jim Delberry, County Drain Commission, on behalf of Duncan Lake 2. It's a drain project. First, I'm going to introduce our new Deputy Drain Commissioner, Elizabeth Hutton.
Welcome, Elizabeth.
She's a little nervous, imagine that. But on to the fun of this. We are doing the Duncan Lake 2 drain project up on Nofke Drive. They did a project back several years ago that was more of an agricultural drain system that was supposed to handle 2 to 3 year storms. Several years ago, they got 5.5 inches of rain in 3 hours, 500-year event. So the road it flooded roads, it flooded homes. So the road commission petitioned us to move forward with improving the drain district. Back in 2020, we had a number of people saying, okay, whatever you do, make sure we don't ever see you again, get it done and put it behind us.
We hear that a lot with you.
Amazing how that works.
Yeah.
We did have a scope meeting in January of 2022 we had 2 different options. We could take the water and gather it in basins and then still conduct it down to the lake by upsizing the pipe down to the lake. That would cure the road project. The other choice was to create 2 basins that will catch the water and actually run it north along Nofke and dump it into Duncan Creek, bypassing the lake 100% with that 500 and some acres. I talked to Mike Bremer why they did the original drain district. He said the whole intent was to keep the sediment from the farm field out of the lake. And so he said, yeah, the whole reason for this drain district is for that. So we presented to the people, we sent out letters, invited people. The ones that did show up, they did a show of hands, and they all said, yeah, we don't want that water in the lake. We got enough issues with our lake. In the meantime, Eric from Thornapple Township, the supervisor, got a petition to do the road, which is Nofke. They'd tried it several times, never could get enough signatures for the petition. I think it's by road frontage or foot frontage, I ain't sure. You'd have to talk to Eric about that, Eric Schaefer. That passed back late last fall. They got their petition, everything was good, the lawyer said it was good. So we reached out to the township and said, hey, you guys are gonna spend money on a road. We don't wanna screw up your new road. And we're gonna have to borrow a bunch of money to do our drain project. What do you think about putting them together? Paul Stoddard, our finance guy, ran the numbers. We saved $18,000 up front by having one financing instead of two. We also make a real good benefit for the people because if we borrow through the drain office, we get a better credit rating because we go off the county's credit rating. So the township was on board with it. We were on board with it. Everything looked good. We are waiting for them to finish their final 30-day appeal before we can do our borrowing.
Okay.
But in planning for that borrowing, we're asking the county to pledge their full faith and credit. And I asked Joe to be here. He's helping with the financing, and he knows a lot more than I do.
How many people are in the Duncan Lake Drainage District?
200 and some, I believe.
200 and some?
Yeah, it's not a real big drain district, but, and when we did our benefits, we had people that were flooded. They paid about 3 times what the people that weren't flooded out. The farmers don't get a real big benefit, so we adjusted some of theirs down, but when they own a lot of property, they still get a pretty good hit, so it was a really tough role to create.
I was going to say 200 people for 2.1 million, almost $2.2 million is quite a chunk.
Yeah, 500,000 of that is for their road. We were at 1.67 million of it, so. But they said, we don't ever want to hear from you again, get it done and get it done right, so that's where we are.
So majority of the residents signed on with us, Jim?
Yeah, we've had $170,000 in prepays. We had a few of them that were mad about it, as usual, because, and we said, you know, we understand, we have to fix the issue. Once we get a petition, if we don't fix the issue, then the district's on the hook for any liability going forward. A flooded road is definitely, I mean, when we had our public hearing for Board of Determination, the fact that the water literally filled up on one side of the road and went across the road for hours on end, that's a big public issue. Some of the people are like, well, we shouldn't pay for it. I get what you're saying, but when Aunt Martha has a heart attack because she's terrified of the storm and the ambulance slides off the road and she dies, that district's gonna get sued. So.
Assuming that this has gone through county legal for combining a road project and a drain project together?
There's a 3-way agreement with the road commission, the township, and us, so, and Joe can speak to that.
Please.
Well, good morning. Joe Kalani, I'm with the law firm of Clark Hill and representing the Duncan Lake number 2 drain. I'll address the issue regarding the combined project. We've assisted with preparing a 3-party agreement, interlocal agreement between the road commission, the township, and the drainage district. And primarily that is to ensure that the revenue or funds necessary to pay for the financing and the bonds, it's roughly about $500,000 or so that will be financed as part of the overall project. And it's included in the $2.17 million not to exceed amount.
Is this a road commission project or a private contractor doing the road?
Well, it's a road commission project. The road commission has, will have their own contractor, whoever they utilize for the road portion.
But it's paid by the road commission on these single-use roads where it's not a mainstay, has adopted the policy that people on those, they're treating them more as a private road and saying, hey, if you want it redone, you pay for it.
Basically, the township has set up a special assessment district for the road. It's a public road, it's a road commission road. Townships don't own roads, only counties. Within the township, the county owns the road. So,
Is it public? He just said it was private.
It's a public road, but they're treating it more as a private road.
No, that's, well, maybe I can help explain it. I know where you're going with it. You're talking about how it's being funded through special assessments. It's a public road, in which case.
It's a county road.
It's a county road.
Maintained by the county.
It's maintained by the county. But the source of revenue for the project itself is through the Townships Act 188, and they've set up a special assessment district to specially assess just for the road portion of the project. And
It's
so
within a plat or something, this road?
it doesn't have to be in a plat.
No, but
It's not in a plat. It's a major county road. But it's, let me back up. There's no township roads. All roads in a township are county roads if they're public or they're private. On the alternative, they could be private. The fact that the road commission is funding this project, it's a county road.
So why is there an assessment district to pay for the road if it's a public road?
It's not unusual to have for a township to partner with the county road commission to fund some of its interior roads. I mean, I come from that kind of situation where my township partners with the road commission in Livingston County for a road and will specially assess part of that cost.
So there's two different assessments, there's one for the road and one for the drain?
Correct, very good.
And those are already determined, the assessment role?
The assessment role process for the road is going through the township under Act 188, and they're in the process right now where they actually have like 3 hearings, and the last hearing was held, and now we're in a referendum period for that.
So you haven't determined the assessment role?
No, the role has been approved.
I thought you said you were in the process of going through the hearings for it.
No, the hearings have all been completed, I just said
okay.
that. And they're currently in the period of referendum under Act 188, which gives 30 days after the final approval of the role.
Okay, so it's set, but
It's
you
set.
have a,
Right.
okay. And these people know about this? And
Under both the
gave
drain
them-
code and under Act 188 requires notice to each property owner.
okay. And both assessments, were they done through petition of the people that are going to be assessed, or they both were done by a board of determination, which was determined by the drain commissioner?
Well, the Board of Determination is one that reviews a petition. The drain project was petitioned by the Road Commission, and I don't know how that's for the drain project. For the road project, I have no idea who petitioned that, because did the people petition? Okay, so the people can petition, because under Act 188, the township can itself set up the special assessment district under Act 188.
So there was a majority of the people that petitioned in favor of the road project?
Correct,
And that's public record?
correct.
And I'm not sure if that was,
That's not our project. At the end of the day, the agreement is that the township's on the hook for the money related to the road project. How the township pays for it, that's up to the township. Township has chosen to set up a special assessment district to fund that. And they've gone through the hearings for that. They have their own attorneys and everybody else handling that. We're not handling that process.
That's in addition to this 2.1 million then?
No, it's in.
That's within it?
Yes.
And what portion of that is that?
500,000 is towards the road project, 1.67 million is towards the drain project.
Okay. Well, you said financing, 500,000 was the financing number, I thought you said.
No, the financing number we're working with is 2.17 million.
Okay. And so the township is, why aren't they able to, the township is in favor of this project? Have they ever did a resolution in favor of it?
Yes, I mean, we've had numerous conversations with the attorneys and the attorneys representing the township. So that project, this is actually a very good thing because you're dealing with public infrastructure, you're dealing with both the road and the drain project, and we're addressing it in the financing. In the overall process, it's going to save taxpayer dollars by having one financing versus two financings.
And why aren't they able to do both financings through the township?
They don't have jurisdiction over the drain project.
Okay. And do we, these costs of, why doesn't this go through the Department of Public Works? Isn't that what that board is for? The financing of a public project?
Because those are two different statutes under which you undertake a project. One, under Act 185, deals with Act 185 type projects. This is a drainage district that's already existing. It has its separate legal entity, and it is the project that is dealing with this particular drain.
Okay, so the assessment roll that you're using, it's the exact same assessment roll that was used before without any changes for the drainage project?
No. There's been certain properties that were added.
Okay.
And the amounts of the assessments have been adjusted.
So it's a corrected roll that you feel confident about?
Yeah, yep.
If I may, there's been a day of review already, and part of that day of review, every property owner is notified and has an opportunity to come in and object. And following that day of review, there's a certain period of time under which they have, each property owner or entity that's been assessed has the ability to appeal that. That appeal period has already ran.
And did anyone appeal?
No.
Well, they came in and talked to us.
Right.
But they didn't go to the courts to appeal it.
Okay. This project's been in the works for quite a while?
3 years.
Okay. You feel confident that you have a budget, I take it?
Yeah.
That's public?
Complete costs, that's where we end up coming up with our borrowing.
Correct. Before any project, it goes to a day of review and assessment roll prepared. There is a computation of cost that's typically follows after the bids come in. And so the bids have come in for the project. There's a certain period of time in which we have to start construction and finance that project. So we're in that process now where we're moving forward with the financing so we can get the project started.
And if that exceeds that number, what happens?
There's a built-in contingency. It shouldn't.
A certain percentage of the project?
Yeah, it cannot exceed 10 to 15%.
Minimum 10, maximum 15.
Okay.
So we're basically bonding both projects together as one, combining them both.
And what is the benefit of the interest rate there?
So what's before you is a full faith and credit resolution. If you have, this is not the first time I think I've come before the board of full faith and credit resolution. The full faith and credit resolution is sort of what it is secondary security that allows for the drainage district to go into the open market. With that secondary security of the county, it allows the underwriters to look at this and with the county's bond rating and so forth to get a much more competitive rate when it comes to the financing. Well, interest rates have been kind of fluctuating, as everyone knows lately, but we're in that, between 3.9 over true interest costs over 20 years. This is planned to be a 20-year bond, likely to be callable around either 8th or 10th, between 8 and 10 years is the time when we plan on having them callable. So the overall interest rate over that period of time is probably going to be anywhere from between 3.8, probably as high as maybe 4.7. So, I will tell you this: the interest rates are kind of fluctuating right now, but at the end of the day, what makes this attractive is you have a joint project. It's a good number for the open market to take a look at 2.1 million or so. And the secondary security in terms of the county, it's the risk, there's always risk there, but at the end of the day, under the drain code, the drain commissioner is obligated, if there's any deficiency in the principal and interest on any of the bonds, to reassess the properties in the district. So that takes into account any kind of delinquencies and so forth. But in the short term, that county security is there to make sure that the full faith and credit of the county's there to ensure that the principal and interest on the bonds will be paid in a timely manner.
And that 3.9% is better than the township could get just with their credit rating. That's what you're saying. That's where the savings is going to occur.
I would assume so, yes, based on the fact that there's, the county's bond rating is much better.
Okay.
Doesn't the county have an administrative fee that they add on top of that?
Not on this.
Not on this?
I'm not aware of that. no.
Okay.
Okay. Further questions? John?
When the people receive their tax bill on this and stuff, will they be itemized between road and drain?
And they've been notified. On this one, we actually reached out to them when we sent the original day of review, their estimated cost per year and including interest, because we've had issues with that where people got their bill and the second year they get a big interest and they're like, why did my payment go up? So this year we tried to offset that. And then we, in our pre-construction meeting, or our pre-construction notice, we included that if they wanted to prepay, they could reach out to us and prepay their amount before the interest is started. Because we always like to do that because we don't, well, the less we have to borrow, the better off we are.
What's that end up being per household? You got any idea?
10 grand.
It fluctuates so much down
Okay.
there. The lakefront, I think the base was 3,000 plus acreage. The ones where the new drain actually runs through their yards and they have the opportunity to tie in their sump pumps or anything else, I think they were a base of 4,000. The agricultural was based on a $2,000 base benefit plus acreage. But they range anywhere, one gal has got 89 acres, her total, I think, came from 26,000 down to 14,000. Some of the lakefront people had a little bit of adjustment, but most of them were between 3,000 and 7,000 total over 20 years.
Per year?
No.
Oh, you're talking about total?
7,000.
Okay.
Yeah, so you're talking.
Okay.
With interest.
I didn't know if you were talking, okay, I got you now. I was like, huh? Per year? I was like, okay, I got you.
Well, and that's where, we've had people, say, oh, I can't afford 7,000 a year. So, no, we're gonna
Yeah.
split it out,
Yeah, I got
we can
you.
get you down around 400 a year. It ain't great, but it's palatable, I guess you'd say,
Yeah,
so.
I got you.
Well, if there's 200 parcels assessed and it's 2.1 million, that'd be over $10,000 on average.
Some of them are. Well, first of all, you take off the county's portion. Because the county road petitioned it, or the county road commission petitioned it, we put 20% on the county because we are preventing their road from being flooded out. Then you have, I believe the township was
I think I want to say 11.
11 or 12%. That comes right off the top.
That's the road portion
Yeah.
that the county's doing.
So it comes down from there, and then you spread that according to the people.
Okay.
Okay. The chair would entertain a motion for the resolution pledging the full faith and credit of the county of Berry within constitutional limitations for the payment of Duncan Lake Number 2 Drainage District Drain Bonds.
Support.
Motion by Hatfield, support by Tunison for the resolution pledging the full faith and credit to the county of Berry within the constitutional limitations for the payment of Duncan Lake Number 2 Drainage District bonds. Further discussion?
What money then is attached to this of ours? What money are we using to pledge the full faith? Out of the general fund, or has this come out of the retirement fund, or?
This is bonded in the open market. I think you can answer that question, but this isn't coming out of the county.
Right.
County surplus, county funds,
So
county
it's,
anything.
in general, we're using all the funds of the county as the full faith and credit on this?
We're using the full faith and credit of the county to secure the bond.
Yeah, yeah.
Is that correct?
Yeah, we're just saying if the drain district were to default, the county would have to pay that. Where we would come up with that Ultimately would be the general fund.
Okay.
Is where you go. Now, we haven't had any defaults, but that's effectively what the whole.
Right, and an assessment is secured by the property itself, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Further discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? The motion carries.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you very much.
Commissioners, you've been over an hour. Do you need a break, or you want to continue going through? We have 2 more items to go through on our agenda before we do our appointments.
Say we keep going. I got a meeting in noon or so.
Okay? Michael Brown?
Even though I have to, I'm gonna hold it.
You okay?
Okay.
Yeah, that chair just got stuck, sorry.
About this.
Daisy, you want to come up? That's all
You do?
right.
Yeah.
Chairman, I'll have an item that we spoke about this morning that came up last minute. I apologize.
Daisy's been waiting patiently for us, so we appreciate that. Thank you.
It's not included in your packet. It was laid on your desk this morning. I'll tee it up and then turn it over to Daisy. But effectively, it's a request to rehire an individual at a rate that is higher than the starting rate for that position. So position that we're talking about is the friend of the court caseworker. It is a BCCEA, Berry County Courthouse Employees Association bargaining position. The contract, the bargaining agreement allows for it. Our personnel policies, however, indicate that if you're going to hire above the 1-year rate, then you need to come to the county board. So I'm going to stop right there and let Daisy talk a little bit more about the position and why, how we got to this request, if you may.
Yes, thank you for hearing this today. I appreciate it. Sarah Newman was employed with the Friend of the Court's office. She would have been going on her 3rd year. This year, she accepted a different position, so the position was vacated back in November. But we did appropriate for her salary at the 3-year rate in our proposed budget for 2003, 4, and 5. So it would be no additional cost to the county, and she expressed an interest in coming back. So we wouldn't have to train her. It would be, just come in, hit the ground running, and it would actually be a cost savings as opposed to hiring somebody and having to train them for a year.
So she was a 3-year employee that took a short-term leave, wants to come back and work for the county again?
Yes.
And the recommendation is that we need to start her base at basically where she had left off with her experience, commensurate with her experience.
Correct.
Okay. Questions from commissioners?
What her benefit package, can you explain that? Where she will
That would
start?
start out as a newly hired employee, so she would have to wait out I believe it's 90 days before her insurance kicks in.
And the insurance we corrected to make first day.
Yeah,
Oh,
right.
But then the
Okay.
vacation, all the PTO would start out as a new hire. And then if she stays for
2
2
years.
years, at that 2-year point, she would be credited. She doesn't get it retro, if you may, but her vacation, for example, instead of being that 3rd year based on 3 years of employment, would be based on now 5 years of employment. So going forward.
Okay. Further questions?
I think it's great we're getting back an employee. I think that bodes well for us.
Yeah, I think this is a reasonable request. We've done this for other departments in the past, and finding qualified people to work in the county has been a challenge at times, so to have somebody that's already trained and up to speed is a benefit for all of us, so. Further questions? The chair would entertain a motion to recommend to the Board of Commissioners permitting Friend of the Court Administration the flexibility to deviate from the entrance salary rate to rehire Sarah Newman as an FOC caseworker at the 3-year rate according to the BCCA salary schedule.
So move.
Support.
Motion by Smelker, support by Hatfield, to recommend to the Board of Commissioners permitting friend of the court administration the flexibility to deviate from the entrance salary rate to rehire Sarah Newman as the friend of the court caseworker at the 3-year rate according to the BCCEA salary schedule. Further discussion?
Nice to have somebody come back that can testify that grass isn't always greener on the other side.
There you go.
Thank
Further
you.
discussion? All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? The motion carries. Thank you, Daisy. Continue on, Michael.
The next item that I have is the request to remove a member from the Community Mental Health Authority Board. The individual is Stacy Adams. Stacy, we did reach out to Ms. Adams and ask if she, well, let me back up. The Mental Health Authority Board sent her a very nice letter confirming that if she was interested in continuing, it's been attendance that's been the issue. And they did not, as I understand, hear back. We followed up with an email to Stacy confirming that if she wanted to remain on the board, she would need to come and present today. She sent us a response email saying, thank you, but I'm interested in not being on the board any longer. She has some other commitments. So with that, it would require a motion to remove Stacy Adams as a member of the Community Health Authority Board, in this case for lacking attendance. But we have it confirmed that she is okay with that.
Yes.
So moved, Oster.
Support.
Okay. Been moved by Doster, supported by Getty, to recommend to the Board of Commissioners removal of Stacy Adams as a member of the Berry County Community Mental Health Authority Board for lack of attendance at meetings. Discussion. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? The motion carries. Thank you.
That will add to, I think you've got that on your thoughts, but as you make appointments to mental health. that
There
will
are
be-
4 openings
There
now.
will be 4.
Okay.
2, I think, with partial terms and 1 full term, so, or two full terms, so. The final item that I have is the reappointment of Joe Sansomino to the Conservation Easement Board. Joe Sansomino has served on the Conservation Easement Board. He did not reapply this last time, and someone else was appointed in his stead. He indicated that he had intended to or would like to remain on the board. Unfortunately, there was not an open position. However, there is a vacancy on that board relative to the township official designee. That was, I don't know who that was.
Hastings
Pardon me,
Charter.
Alfred Gambrich.
Al Gambrich.
Previously
Yes,
served on, in
that's
that
correct.
capacity and represented.
Hastings
was it
Charter.
Hastings,
Well, he came to Hastings Charter and talked.
Joe
did.
Sansomino did.
Yes.
I don't remember which township, I apologize, that Mr. Gemrich represented, but officially to Commissioner Tunison's point, Joe Sansomino went to Hastings Charter Township, and you have a copy of their minutes where the township has officially designated him as a representative of theirs, making him eligible to serve on this Conservation Easement Board as as in the township official / designee position. So if you're so inclined, we'd recommend the reappointment of Joe Sansomino.
Questions for Michael?
No, I just comment that Al Gamrich was representing Hope Township,
Thank you.
and I work with Joe. I'm on that board. He's always done a good job, very knowledgeable, good one to have back.
Okay.
Absolutely agree with that.
The chair would entertain a motion to recommend to the Board of Commissioners approval to appoint Joseph Sansomino to the Berry County Conservation and Easement Board as a township designee for a term that began on January 1st, 2023 and ends on December 31st, 2023.
So moved.
Support.
Motion by Getty, support by Smelker, to recommend to the Board of Commissioners approval to appoint Joe Sansomino to the Berry County Conservation and Easement Board as a township designee for a term that began on January 1st, 2023 and ends on December 31st, 2023. Further discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries.
Thank you.
Michael, so let's do, first of all, I think, I'll probably have a question for you on the community mental health, but we had one interview for planning and zoning. So at this point, since that'll be the easier one, following the interview, if you liked Mr. Joseph Kammerzind to fill that vacant seat on there, then I would entertain a motion.
So moved.
Support.
Motion by Smelker, support by Getty, following the interviews to recommend to the Board of Commissioners approval to appoint Joseph Kammerzind to serve on the Berry County Planning Commission for a 3-year term that begins on 5/1/23 and expires on 4/30/26. Discussion?
Mr. Chair, a meeting that you were not present to, that Mr. Hatfield officiated over, I made a comment about whether we could ask another candidate that we'd had for the Road Commission, Yuli Sala, if he was interested in this position, because I thought he was such an outstanding candidate that I thought that this would be a very good fit for him. To have his expertise on that. Does anyone know whether that ever occurred? Was there ever any sort of reach out to him?
I agree that there were several fantastic candidates for the Road Commission, but I don't know that there was follow-up on that. So,
do you know,
I
Michael?
don't believe that there was.
Okay.
but there will likely be continued openings on that board, and I certainly would recommend him, or you can communicate with
I'd
him.
like to nominate him for the planning and zoning as well, then. We've already interviewed him. I thought he was exceptional. I think he'd be a great candidate.
Okay. My only concern is that he didn't have that listed as something he was interested in doing.
That's why I had requested at the board for us to contact him to see whether he was.
So to appoint him to a position that he didn't apply for, I don't know that that would fit with, surprise, you're now the chairman. So, I guess you can vote how you would like.
Okay.
So, and as we've done in the past, when the clerk calls a roll, if you would name the person that you would want, there's one person, Joseph Kammerman, so I don't think we need a roll call vote on it. Kammerzind.
I'm going to say Joseph.
Yes. We have a motion on the table. All those in favor of Joseph Kammerman, please say aye.
Aye.
Let's make it simple. Opposed?
Aye.
That is duly noted. Thank you. The motion carries. Now, with community mental health, Michael, you said we have two full terms?
Well, I'll make sure we have 3. Pardon me, we have 3.
Okay.
The incumbent Dwayne Secord, incumbent William Matson, and then the Nora Hurst, who resigned. And those terms, all 3 of those terms will begin 4/1 of, they will begin 4/1 of 23, and they're 3-year terms, so I had to look at that.
Why does this piece of paper say that there are 3 positions, and that if we take Stacy Adams off, that'll be the 4th partial term will be open?
Correct.
That's correct. The
Okay.
Stacy Adams is the partial term.
Oh, okay.
So, yep, you have
So
three
three full
fulls,
terms, and then we'll make an appointment for the partial one?
Then
Is
you have
that
a
the?
partial term,
Okay.
yeah.
So we'll do a roll call on this. When Madam Clerk calls your name, if you could give her 3 names that you are recommending for those full terms. And then we will vote after this on the partial term to fill that. Does that make sense? Discussion, further discussion or questions? Okay. So these are for the 3 full terms for community mental health. Madam Clerk, would you call the roll?
Colton. Mark Bond Sr., William Manson, and Dwayne Secord.
Campbell.
Mark Bond Sr., William Matson, and Dwayne Secord.
Doster.
Senior, Mattson, Secord.
Getty.
Bonsignor, Mattson, Secord.
Hatfield.
Monsignor, Matson, and Secord.
Smelker.
Monsignor, Matson, Secord.
Tunison.
Bonsignor, Mattson, Secord.
Jackson.
Bonsignor, Matson, and Secord. I think that was unanimous.
It was.
Okay. So the chair would entertain a motion to recommend to the Board of Commissioners appointment or reappointment of Mark Bonsignor, William Matson, and Dwayne Secord to serve on the Berry County Community Mental Health Authority Board for a 3-year term that began April 1st, 2023 and expires March 31st, 2026.
So moved.
Support.
Motion by Hatfield, support by Getty, to recommend to the Board of Commissioners reappointment or appointment of Mark Bonsignor, William Matson, and Dwayne Secord to serve on the Berry County Community Mental Health Authority Board for 3-year terms that begin April 1st, 2023 and expires on March 31st, 2026. Discussion? Other than to say there are several great candidates there that hopefully all those people can participate in community mental health in some way, shape, or form, because there were some fantastic candidates. So
Agree.
all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. We have one open position for a partial term. We have Lorraine Lindsay, Robert Miller, and Fred Wagner as potential candidates for that. When Madam Clerk calls your name, please specify which one of those candidates you prefer. Madam Clerk, will you call the roll?
Campbell.
Miller.
Doster. Miller. Getty.
Miller.
Hatfield.
Miller.
Smelker.
Lindsay.
Tunison.
Miller.
Colton.
Miller.
Jackson.
Miller.
7-1.
7-1 for Miller. With that, the chair would entertain a motion to recommend to the Board of Commissioners appointment of Robert Miller to serve on the Berry County Community Mental Health Authority Board for the remainder of a term that began on April 1st, 2021 and ends on March 31st, 2024.
So moved.
Who was that by?
Doster,
Doster?
I'll second it.
So moved, Doster.
Motion by Doster, support by Smelker, to recommend to the Board of Commissioners appointment of Robert Miller to serve on the Berry County Community Mental Health Authority Board for the remainder of a term that began on April 1st, 2021 and ends on March 31st, 2024. Discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Thank you to all of our candidates. Okay. Thank you, Mike. Public comment. At this time, any member of the public wishing to address the board may do so for up to 3 minutes.
I appreciate all the commissioners' dedication to the service. It's been a long meeting, and it just warms my heart to see dedication to public service, so I appreciate that. So at the end of the March 13th meeting, I believe it was, there was some data that was shared on substance abuse, substance misuse. And I subsequently received a question on that, and I provided some information, which I think was distributed to all of you this morning. And then I was asked to maybe just give a couple comments on that to clarify or to add to that. So the data that was shared is what's commonly referred to as BH-TEDS. And so that's from the regional data so it encompasses all 8 counties. It is also broken down per county. BH-TEDS is behavioral health treatment episode data. And so what that means is, so somebody that's coming into the public mental health system, they collect various demographic information. And so it's important to realize that we're capturing people that are in the public mental health system. It's not capturing individuals that are outside of that, so third-party insurance, Medicare, people that maybe go to the hospital, or first responders that don't subsequently follow up with treatment in the public mental health system. So it's in essence one slice of a pie. It can give an understanding of direction, but it's important to note that it's just one slice of that pie. As was presented, it is true so that the opiate use within Berry County has decreased over the last year. Again, it's important to kind of take a look at that and say, okay, what's going to happen next year and the following year? Is that like a one-year kind of bump down, or hopefully that's a trend downward? The other thing to realize is that we see with the decrease in opiates, specifically in Berry County, there's been an increase in meth use, but we also are seeing an increase in that meth that's combined or laced with fentanyl or other opiates. So what the data that's presented is people that come into treatment, it's your primary substance, choice of substance, sometimes it's called. So individuals that come in that they might say they're coming into service for meth or misusing meth, addicted to meth, but there's also an opiate component to that. We see so in Berry County, that's opioid use has decreased, but across the 8 counties, if you combine the other opiates with heroin, that's still second next to alcohol. So it's still an issue. It's still something we need to address in treatment and prevention. Another data point to kind of keep note of is that the use of Narcan, and again, this is just a slice of the pie, right? So since 2016, SWMBA's reported that in our region, that application of Narcan, which is the reversal drug for opiate overdose, has gone up from 44 usage to 162 over since 2016. Now that's just a slice of the pie from law enforcement reporting that. So that's just, that's not the actual reversals, that's just the amount of Narcan that's been used in those situations. So it's good information. The question that came to me, and I thought y'all might be getting questions, so I just provided some additional information, so thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Rich. Appreciate your leadership and all that community mental health does. Additional public comment?
Hello, Adam Eichla, local business owner and former Bedford Township supervisor. Just I guess a comment really, and I guess a concern. We have the agenda here. I was late getting here, so I don't know if the things were added onto the agenda, but the agenda, there was things added on under Michael Brown, as well as after Michael Brown, there's just public comment time. There's not anything that says that you're making those appointments that you did. I mean, it just makes sense if you have an agenda that you would have the things on the agenda that your business that you're conducting, especially an action item like the votes that you just did to, again, because it's weird because you're approving to tell yourselves next week who you voted for. It makes no sense to most of the people. I really don't get why that's separated as like two different things, and it's like it's different because it's not. Again, it's you guys are the same people, and you're telling yourselves, and now you don't even have an actual process that you follow. You just have stuff that I mean, either you added it in before I got here, or you guys literally just did things that are what? They're nothing. You know, so how does anyone that's from the outside able to come in and follow your process procedure, know what you're supposed to be doing, not doing, when it kind of looks willy-nilly style? We just throw some things in here and there and do them, and there we go. And really, the whole meeting today was mainly for that purpose of the recommendation to yourselves next week to vote on. I mean, once again, so I mean, there's just some cleanup still, you know. I mean, you guys do a great job overall for compared to a lot of places I go. But you know, just some cleanup there, you know. I mean, it just doesn't make sense. So that's all.
Thank you, Adam. Further public comment? Going once? Okay. Commissioner comments. Commissioner Doster.
Kind of tying along with making the recommendations to yourself, you know, my belief is that if we had, say, 3 standing committees, say finance, personnel, property, 3 commissioners on each one, each commissioner would be on 1, the chair could be on 2. Those would take the place of the committee of the whole. When I was on the board previously, a standing committee did all of the interviews. There wasn't, and then the recommendation came to the board as a whole, and there was additional discussion or whatever. But at least a different minds were seeing things that were recommended instead of just to yourself. So I agree with that.
Okay. Commissioner Getty.
I don't have any comments.
Commissioner Smelker.
I guess I'm not against the committee situation if it's decided to go to that way. But I am not for paying per diems for committees. This is within our salary range of what we get, and that's it. That's all I got.
Commissioner Hatfield.
I have nothing.
Commissioner Campbell.
I have nothing.
Commissioner Tunison.
Just one thing. Earlier, when Scott Savage came here and apologized, I commend him for that, having the courage to do that and stand up and be a man. So I got a lot of respect for him. He ran against me, and we've built a good relationship. But I thought today, him coming here was, for his outburst, was a good thing. So,
Absolutely. And just to address one question that was asked, in the packet, we do have specific action items for each one of, like, the specific interviews for community mental health and for planning and zoning. There is an action item listed in the packet that indicates that we are going to do a vote on that in the future. Traditionally, we have done the interviews and got through our agenda and made those appointments at the end of the meeting, so it is broken up, so that is correct. It does look a little funky from the outside if you're not familiar with how we run those. So I agree with that. And we did have an additional agenda item that came in because employment's been rather difficult in the county. It was something that we had done in the past that was a pretty standard practice for us in the past. So we did add that to the agenda, and it was not listed on the agenda. So for that, I do apologize. Other than that, we appreciate you sitting with us through a rather long meeting. Have a wonderful day. Watch the weather. It's going to be interesting out there, but it is spring. So thank you.